and players mob him.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm Sherrod Blakely, and my guest today is the one and only James Edwards III from The Athletic. James, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain. Had a good holiday. It's not snowing really yet here. It's raining, but it's not snowing yet, so it could be much worse.
Oh my goodness, it could be so much worse. It could be so much worse. And James covers the Detroit Pistons for The Athletic. And before we get into that, because there's a lot to unpack with that, I want to just let our listeners know that this episode of the Big Three NBA podcast is brought to you by Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston, and new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Now, James, my friend, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I've been thinking about all my brothers in Detroit and sisters in Detroit who have any relationship in any way, shape, or form with the Detroit Pistons. First of all, how are you holding up through what has been? We've seen, all of us who cover the NBA, we've covered teams that have had like stretches of losses piling up, but you are in a historical run, unfortunately. How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fine. Like, I guess the hardest part now is now that you've gotten like to this far, like I just feel like I've run out of things to write about, or I've been writing the same thing over and over. That's probably the toughest part. But in terms of like the day-to-day, one thing Detroit has done well over the few years is getting like good guys in the locker room, guys that understand our job, guys that, as long as you're fair and you're not like, this guy sucks, like, you know how the decorum that we have to carry ourselves with in this job, as long as you're not like doing personal attacks, like they understand what's going on, they understand the situation. Hell, some of the players feel bad for us too, like they understand that our job's not easy right now either. So it's been fine. I would just say the hardest part is like trying to continue to come up with creative stories to do. But listen, I've covered this team. This is my 7th season, and it's not like they've won in any of those seasons anyway. So it's just a more compact version of what I've been doing for several years.
Yeah, it's you know, when I look at just some of the work you've done, another one of my good friends and colleague of yours, Michael Curtis, some of the work you guys have done, it's almost like a 180 of when I covered the team years ago, what I had to do. Like you guys, it's really hard to find like that silver lining to just really, you know, find the positives when there's so many losses. And, you know, when I covered the team, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals or NBA Finals pretty much every year.
Right.
And I was, you know, really trying to find what are they not doing well? What can they get better at? How has that process been figuring out, just trying to find, you know, those little nuggets or morsels of positivity when there's just, it seems like just an avalanche of just obviously bad results?
Yeah, that's kind of like the tug and pull right now for me. It's because like in previous years, like they weren't expected to be very good, and the focus was on rebuilding and the growth of the young guys. So like most of the season you spent talking about like the development of certain players, and it's like that's because the team didn't have much expectations, right? And then this year they kind of put it on themselves. Yeah, we want to compete till the end. We want to have a chance for the play-in at the least. And it's like, okay, so now we have to talk about how you're performing as a group. And for me, like I don't think it's worth, when you're in the midst of a losing streak like this, it's kind of, I just don't think it's correct to try to point out any positive. Like it's just, this is a losing streak like it's never been seen before. So you have to emphasize that. But like, I guess I've like trickled in, like Cade has been really, really, really good the last 10 games or so of this losing streak. So I've sprinkled in a story about him. I have one about, well, both the Thompson twins and their other brother coming when the Pistons play the Rockets for the first time on Monday. So you can like kind of sprinkle stuff in there, but I think when you're losing like this, something nobody's ever done before, it's kind of hard to I don't even think it's right to try to make an attempt to write anything positive, to be honest with you.
Right. Do you find yourself looking a little bit closer at the opponent and just maybe what they're doing and maybe storylines related to them? Because I found, you know, that's when I think about just the challenge that you face in trying to really continue to churn out compelling copy. Part of me thinks that maybe you want to kind of take a little peeky over at what the other team is doing and maybe shift a little bit of the attention that way for every now and then.
Yeah, I mean that's a one way to go about it. I think my job's a little different because there's likely one of me covering the other team, just
Mm.
because we're at the Athletic and there's a lot of teams are covered, so it's kind of I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. But that certainly is a way to look at it. Like that's no question. Sometimes, yeah, I wish I had that luxury.
And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but the locker room and win or lose, we've seen enough teams where there's some level of drama or tension, whether they're winning a lot of games or losing. What's been your overall sense about the players in this locker room and just how they've handled just an unprecedented run of lack of success?
Yeah, and they don't show it when we're around if there is any type of confrontation, but I'm sure there has been confrontation, right? But it's not anything that is out of the normal. Like you know, you've covered good teams that have confrontation. There's confrontation within families. Like that's just normal when you're around somebody that much, and then you add in the losing. But when I get in the locker room, it's obviously depending on the matchup. Like some days are more somber than others. How they lost, some days are more somber than others. But it hasn't been an unpleasant work environment to where I can't like walk in there and the guys I have relationships with, like if I need a quote, they're always willing to help. They're always willing uh to do their job and so I could do my job and shoot arounds and stuff. Like they're the guys I still joke around with. Like it's obviously like they're shell shocked and they're hurt and they're like, what the heck's going on? And I think they're still trying to wrap their like head around it, but there's a level of professionalism. As young as this team is, they all carry themselves very well, and I appreciate them for that because they could make my job even truly hell if they wanted to. Um, like it could be so much worse. I mean, our good friend Vinny Goodwill covered teams that rebelled against the coach, right? Um,
Mhm.
it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, me and Mr. Goodwill, we had many conversations about how to handle that and how not to handle that. And sometimes he listened to me, sometimes he didn't, but that's another story, another day. The one thing as I've kind of watched this, and all of us in the NBA ecosystem have kind of watched this from afar, I've been curious about Monty and just how
Mhm.
he's doing. I mean, this is a guy that, for those of us who cover the league, we saw what he did in Phoenix. We know, his time in New Orleans. And me, I go all the way back to when he played in New York. He's always been a really likable guy, someone that even though you don't want to necessarily root for coaches and root for players, you kind of found yourself sometimes rooting for Monty. Some of the personal tragedies that he's had to deal with and overcome. He's been through a lot,
Mhm.
and I think that's probably helped shape his perspective on this losing streak to
Yeah.
some extent. But I'm just curious, how has he been in terms of dealing with the media through all this?
No, he's been good. He's answered every question thrown his way, even questions that criticized him. Um, I think there's like a misconception out there that he just only took this job for the money and doesn't care. But like I can promise you and tell you as somebody who's around every day, the guy cares. Nobody was asking that question when the Pistons were 2-1, right? Like
Right.
it's a matter of the situation. But he certainly um he's right there. Like he's taking all the blame for it. Everything that has gone on, he's saying this is on me, that's on me, this is on me. Like it's been pretty repetitive with that message. And obviously that's what you want to see if you're, I would assume, as a player, from your leader, from a guy who's been through the fire before. But he's certainly, yeah, like I'm still getting to know Monty. I like his bluntness. If you have a question and he doesn't understand it, he'll ask you to rephrase it. If you don't ask a good question, he'll give you a short answer, or he'll his way of humor is throwing it right back at you. So like I respect his bluntness, and um I think he's definitely, like, he's never went through anything like this. I think he feels the weight of being paid all this money and being kind of the one asked to turn this thing around, and it's not happening. Like I think he feels all that. Um and it's been interesting to see, but he's handled himself well.
Yeah, one of his really close friends who's no longer among the coaching fraternity, but still very close to Monty is Doc Rivers, and Doc and I have had conversations about Monty prior to the losing streak, and you know having I think the one thing that's probably helping Monty kind of deal with this is just his support system.
Mhm.
A group of folks who have been there through some of the really toughest, tumultuous moments in his life, helping him keep perspective. And the thing that bothers me, James, and then I don't, again, this is me from afar, but people act like this dude can't coach. People act like
Yeah.
this dude has never had any type of success as a head coach in the NBA. The contract that he got with the Pistons, you don't just give that contract out to some dude that you think is cool. You don't give
Yeah.
that to your boy. You give that to someone who you think is going to elevate your franchise.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit fanduel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And along those lines, James, I'm just curious, how has the front office, from what you can tell, kind of viewed these struggles? From their perspective, are you getting a sense of how they've kind of viewed the losing streak, and whether Monty, is a guy that they're like, I don't know if this was the right guy, or are you getting any kind of vibe at all about how they see Monty any differently now than maybe when they hired him?
I mean, yeah, I think that certainly, like, I don't think they've lost trust in him. I don't think that they don't think he's the man for the job. I think they're just as shocked that, listen, the team's really young, but they got talented players. Nobody expects this, right? And they got kind of, it hurt them early on because the few veterans they do I have on the team, like, were all hurt at the beginning of the year. And
Right.
Monty Morris still hasn't played the game this year. The Pistons are one of the worst turnover teams in the league by a good margin. Bojan Bogdanovic, I don't think that we're even having this conversation if he started at the beginning of the year. Not to say that they would be good, but I don't think we're having this conversation. Joe Harris has been injured, and when he has played, he hasn't been super productive. Alec Burks started really hot, being the Alec Burks that we know, got hurt and has been one of the least efficient shooters. So it's like their plan of like having enough veterans to help lead the young guys backfired on them. I do think that, like, when it pertains to Monty, like, they gave him the runway to learn this team himself and make his own conclusions. And I think obviously you want that to happen, but I also think he maybe took a little while to learn this team. Like, I think the tough love with Jaden Ivey maybe lasted a little too long, just given their circumstances. Uh, the all bench lineups haven't worked for them, but they continue to use them. I think it's certainly, like, I think there are people in the front office who would rather have Jaden Ivey play significantly more than like Killian Hayes, but Monty likes Killian Hayes, and he wanted to give him a shot early. So there's certain things like here and there that I mean, there's people you work with you don't always agree with, but I don't think it's anything that, like, is uncomfortable for anybody. No.
Yeah, and when people look at this team, they see a lot of youth, and they see a lot of potential, and you can understand why Troy Weaver wanted certain players to be part of this franchise. But these type of stretches of play brings up that R word, rebuilding, and it's like,
Mhm.
how do you rebuild with a relatively young team? But typically, when you rebuild, it's because you've tried it a certain way, you've mixed in young and not so young players, and you've got a little bit of a balance there, and it's just not working. So you just scrap it all, and then you just try to start over. But it seems like there's enough youth on this team where I'm not sure if a rebuild is necessarily going to be the way to go with this team. Man, what's your take on just the potential of them having another rebuild after this current rebuild?
Yeah, I don't think they need that. I think they just need to, like, usher in more veterans that are impactful players. Like, it's not they got to put the young players in the best position to succeed. They need more spacing around Cade. They need to use Asar. It's kind of like how Bruce Brown was used in Brooklyn, just like a short roller playmaker. They got to have shooters around Jalen Duren, who's been a great lob threat with Cade. In terms of like Jaden Ivey, like give him the runway to be him, let him handle the ball and take pressure off of Cade. So I think the most important thing, like if this team could add like one or two veterans who are like NBA rotation players before the deadline, I think again they'll just go from a regular bad team into like a historically bad team. They just need guys who have been there before, who knows what it takes to win a game down the stretch, who can hit some open shots. Like that's the biggest thing. They've been really kind of let down by their veterans, not named Bogdanovich, and he struggled defensively. But like I said, Monty Morris hasn't played. Alec Burks has really struggled, and Joe Harris hasn't played. So you're asking a bunch of young guys who have never learned to win at this level to try to climb out of a hole that not only have they never seen, but most people who play the sport have never seen.
And and to your point, James, if one of those three guys has an average season at this point, you're probably not on a 27, 28 game losing streak,
Right.
most likely. Right. Excellent. And again, I wanted us to kind of get into just some of the big stakeholders. And obviously we talked about the, guys in the locker room, we talked about front office, head coach. And then there's, to me, the stakeholder in every franchise that often gets overlooked, and that's the fan. And you wrote a really good column about just, the fans, you just really, they deserve better. And talk to the folks a little bit about that column and just what was the genesis of it? What made you feel at that particular moment that was the right column to write?
Yeah, man. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was what's today? Thursday. I want to say it was a week ago today. The Pistons were facing the Utah Jazz, who were without like 5 starters / rotation players. The team had lost 25 straight games, and yet you look around the arena and the place is packed. The place is full. And everybody is like, this is the night. Like it's Utah, who when healthy isn't that good of a team, but missing guys like Lauri Markkanen and THT and Jordan Clarkson, like this is the game, especially for a team that's lost 25 straight. And they lost. They lost to that team. And the people were with them the whole time. They were loud. They were cheering them on. And it's like, I don't think you can't take that for granted, because me and you, we travel. We've seen some of these arenas with great teams. They don't get full. Miami's not the greatest place for basketball. You see the Clippers, like they still struggle with attendance. Like we can go down to Atlanta, like is not a great, it doesn't usually have great crowds. Like, how much this city loves Detroit and how much they love the Pistons. And they've been through a lot the last 15 years. And I just think that it was kind of unacceptable for that group to lose the way that they did to that Utah Jazz team when you've lost 25 in a row. It shouldn't be the Jazz playing like the team that doesn't want to lose to the Pistons. It should be the Pistons playing like they're done with this losing streak. And I just thought, looking around the arena, hearing how loud it was, it just kind of like hit me. That's like, they don't deserve this. Whatever this is, they don't deserve that.
Yeah, it just seems that watching, I've seen them play 3 or 4 times this year. And
I'm sorry about that.
it's okay. I've watched this team play 3 or 4 times this year. And the thing
I was saying I'm sorry about that you watched them.
I know what you meant.
Oh, okay.
I've done it intentionally. Call me a glutton for punishment, but I actually did that. Here's the thing that jumps out to me, though. They play well for like 2 or 3 quarters, and then when it matters most, it's just like they almost feel like, oh my God, I can't believe we're almost going to win this game. What are we going to do? And I don't know how they can go about fixing that, because they've been, of those 20, I mean, you know this better than I do, but I gotta believe that there's been at least a handful of games, if not more, where they were basically 4 or 5 minutes away from coming away with a victory.
Yeah, or I'll take it a step further. Like there was a couple games a couple weeks ago against the Knicks. I think they lost to the Knicks by 6, and in the first quarter they turned the ball over 8 times. Right? Like you can't. They have to learn that every possession, every stretch, like it's not just always the end that costs you a game. The other night against Brooklyn, they outscored Brooklyn, I think, in every quarter. I think they might have got outscored by like 3 in the fourth, but they lost the game because they got outscored by 13 in the second quarter. And it's things like that where it's like one quarter they get blasted and they're not good enough to overcome such a deficit. But to your point, like at the end of games, you see them playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And you see some tentativeness. You see just kind of like shell shockness and like what do we do? Like it's because teams that have players that have been in big moments, like they know the aggressiveness, and you don't play the same way in the final 5 minutes you played in the previous 35. And a lot of teams have guys that have been through those situations, and they know that this team doesn't. And it shows, whether it's missing open shots, whether it's turning the ball over, whether it's being too antsy on defense, and you're going for pump fakes. Like, I think a lot of what they're going through is just a product of having too many young guys. And I think that's the danger of rebuilding. I think there has to be a great balance of, don't always rely on the youth. Yes, you want them to develop, and you want to put them in certain situations, but I think it's very important to have a guy out there or two who have done it before. I think that helps those young guys see it can get done, and it builds confidence when it does get done. It's helpful. It's all psychological, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you look at a lot of the great players in the game now, there was that veteran on the team that could be almost like their North Star, if you will, when they were first getting started in the league. When you look at a Kyrie Irving, you look at LeBron James, you look at Anthony Davis, you look here in Boston with Jason Tatum, you can go down the line of like the top 5, top 10 guys. Almost every one of them had that one vet that either was helping kind of point them in the right direction on the court or off the court. A guy like Luka, as great as he's been in Dallas, Dirk was in his hair early and often, whether he was on the court with him or not. And there's so much value in having guys like that, and it's painfully obvious when it's not there. Which brings me to one of my last couple of points. And to me, the person that I worry about more than anyone else in this entire saga is Cade. I mean, Cade is a special talent. I felt that way before the draft. I've felt that way ever since. Him and I've had conversations in summer league where we've talked about that, and just becoming a leader. This is probably not the blueprint he thought of his leadership and how it would have to take center stage. But I worry about him not in terms of talent, but just in terms of, as you pointed out, just the confidence to be a leader, and that he's doing the right things and that he's taking the right steps to become, a face of the franchise of a winning situation. And I worry that this is a tremendous blow from a mental standpoint for him than anything else. What's your take on Cade at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern. And as somebody who has a good relationship with them, I think he wanted to go number one because he wanted those responsibilities. He wanted that anxiety that comes with trying to turn a franchise around and being the face and being the guy who talks and the guy who takes the blame and takes the accomplishments when they come. And this is what he wanted. I don't think he knew, or anybody could have expected it came in this fashion, right? Like, this isn't a normal thing. But I do think he's built for it. I think he has he has a great family, that he was raised well. I think he's blessed to be able to like do what he does. And I think he's just a down to earth person who understands like it's bigger than basketball. And it's like, this is something that we need to like get through together. Like, this is almost like lifelike. This is take basketball away from it. This is a group of people going through something that they've never gone through before and have to figure out how to get out of it. Like, this can be applied to life. So I think he has the right mentality. I think, like I said, the last 10 games of this streak, he's been really, really good. The first 10, and he'll be the first to tell you, his play is part of the reason they lost maybe 10 in a row early on, right? Like, he turned the ball over more than anybody in the league. So he'll tell you that, and he takes responsibilities for that. But as of late, he's been doing everything he can. And I think both on the floor and vocally, he's a guy that guys really do rally around, and a guy that people listen to when he does talk. So I don't think it'll break his spirit. I think he understands that like the situation isn't ideal, of course, but like with a few tweaks here and there, like this isn't going to be who they are forever. Like, there are going to be changes, of course. Like, you lose this much, there are going to be changes, and it's just a matter of making sure they get him right. But I don't think he believes this is like what they are and who he is and who they are for forever. He's told me many times it's gonna get better one day.
Yeah, and I agree with him. I just think that there's certain players, I think, having gone through something like this, would just absolutely wilt. And I don't think he's that type. And again, you know his background as well as anybody. Well, he's built better than most to go through something like this and actually come out on the other side
Agreed.
So I'm excited to see how Cade is gonna navigate going forward, because again, he's a special talent, and yes, they're in an absolutely horrendous stretch of play, to say the least. But I do think I do think that he's going to figure out how to elevate this franchise when all's said and done. Now, my last question to you, James, put on the James Edwards III Dr. Cap, if you will, because I need you to come up with what's the one remedy or one change or one tweak that the Detroit Pistons can make that will get them on the right track to success. What's the one thing that they could do that can just move them in the right direction from obviously the where they are right now?
I think they just need to improve the bench. I think they just need, like I said, one or two more NBA proven players who can come in, defend on the perimeter, and shoot threes. They need more 3-and-D wings. They're really lacking there right now. Asar Thompson, who I think is going to have a bright future, is really good defensively, but he struggles on offense. Bojan Bogdanovic is amazing offensively. He struggles defensively. They had high hopes for Isaiah Livers, and he's really struggled since coming back from his ankle injury. Same with Alec Burks. He's just struggled, and if he's not giving you much on offense, there's not a lot there on defense. So I just think if they even bolster the bench with one or two guys who have been there before, who have done it, who can play two-way, again, they'll turn into a regular bad team, I think. And you look at the starters the last few games, the starters have been pluses. It's the bench and Monty going to the all bench units at times where they just really lose the game. And I don't know if that's maybe him hey, look, we need some bench players. We need a few more. But even if it's not, it's very evident to everybody that they're just not deep enough right now to withstand expecting that much from one Cade, who just came back after a year off due to injury. Guys like Ivy and Duren has been in and out of the lineup with injury. That's just a lot to put on young guys. I think they just need a little bit of veterans who still got juice left to help get them out of this.
They definitely have lots of room for improvement, for sure. I cannot say the same for you, Mr. Edwards, because you are already a proven stud in the business.
Stop. I'm trying to be like you, man.
Nah. Raise the bar, my friend. Raise the bar. James Edwards III covers the Detroit Pistons for The Athletic. Check out all his content on The Athletic. Again, lots of good stuff. He's done a hell of a job covering this team for, 6-7 years now?
Yeah, it's my 7th season. Yep.
Right. Does a great job covering the Pistons. And again, one last shout out to our Big Three NBA podcast sponsors, Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media Network, where new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. You can check out this episode of the Big Three NBA podcast on all your podcasting apps. And again, check out my good friend James Edwards and all of his content on the Athletics website. James Edwards, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Glad to have you on the show.
Hey, I really appreciate you having me, man. Happy holidays, happy New Year, and tell Gary and Kwani, they both miss when I show up. Not even just one of them. They're both I got that. I'll take this one off.
It could be intimidation. They might be intimidated.
All right, I'll see them soon.
That's the card I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play the intimidation card.
There we go. I'll see them soon.
All right, James. Good talking to you, my friend.
You too. Thank you.